Hi, seventh graders. This is Mrs. Trendell here from SCAZA to talk about our next lesson. But before we get into our next topic, I'd like to do a little review. And last week, in our last lesson, we discussed friendships and peer influences. We talked about how we bond with people, with others, when we share experiences, when we find common interests, and when we match our values. Okay, so we have those in common. When you can be yourself, you don't need to hide or change who you are to be around your friends. Okay, so it's really important to be yourself, okay, and be proud of who you are. Okay, and knowing the qualities that make for a healthy friend and how to be a good friend can create lifelong friendships. Okay, so today in our fifth lesson, we're going to be talking about addiction. Okay, and we're going to talk about the 4 stages of addiction. We're going to give examples of each of those stages. And we're also going to talk at the end about some common pressures that teens might be faced with. And we're going to discuss some healthy alternatives to those pressures. Okay, so today's lesson, we're going to start by running a little experiment. What I'm going to have you do is just take out a sheet of paper, okay, and you're probably going to have to pause this after I read this slide, or at the end of this slide, you might have to pause it, give yourself 30 seconds to do the experiment. So what I want you to do is copy the sentence that I've written on the slide on a sheet of paper. Okay, the sentence says, Lillian Mitford started smoking cigarettes. Lillian's friend said, "Smoking stinks. What a disgusting habit." Okay, so, but there's a catch, okay? You are not allowed to dot your I's or cross any of the T's. Okay, so pause this, give yourself 30 seconds, and we will talk about it on the next slide. So hopefully you have completed this little experiment. Now I want you to think about, was this a hard task to accomplish? Okay, and why? Why was this hard if you said yes? Well, for most of us it was pretty hard because we are in such a habit of crossing our T's and dotting our I's. We've been doing this since we learned to write. Okay, we do it without even thinking about it. And this is an example of a habit. Okay, a habit is a behavior that has become so much a part of our life that you don't even stop to think about it anymore. So drug use can be habitual or habit forming also. While the initial decision to use a drug is voluntary, or it's by your choice, regular drug use can become so much a part of someone's life that using the drug becomes as automatic as crossing T's and dotting I's. So suppose I told you that you could never cross a T or dot an I again. Do you think that you would be able to do that even if you wanted to? Maybe, but it would be very hard. Okay, so it is not impossible to break a habit, but it can be difficult. It's even harder to stop using drugs because drugs are not only habit forming, but they can be addictive as well. Think of a habit that you might have. Okay, some people bite their fingernails. Some people say "like" all of the time. Another habit, and a healthy habit, is to brush your teeth every day, twice or 3 times a day. Okay, well, drug use can be habit forming also. Okay, so while the initial decision to use a drug is by choice, regular drug use can be so much a part of someone's life that using the drug becomes as automatic as crossing your T's and dotting your I's. Suppose I told you that you could never cross a T or dot an I again. Do you think that you would be able to do it even if you wanted to? Maybe, but it would be very hard. Okay, so it's not impossible to break a habit, but it can be difficult. It's even harder to stop using drugs because drugs are not only habit forming, but they can be as addictive as well. So what does it mean to be addicted? Or what does addictive mean? Addictive means being dependent on or hooked on something. Okay, so the person feels that they have to have it. So a person can be physiologically addicted, meaning that the body needs the drug to operate normally. And a person can be psychologically dependent, meaning they are hooked on a feeling. So what's the harm in trying a drug just one time? Do you think that someone who starts using a drug expects to become addicted? No. Addiction develops in stages, and the user is often unaware of its progression until it's too late. Chances are the first time won't be the last time. So we're going to take a closer look at how each stage progresses. So the 4 stages of addiction are listed below. Stage 1 is experimental use. Stage 2 is pattern use. Stage 3 is problem use. And stage 4 is addiction. So over the next few slides, we're going to break that down, and we're going to give examples of each one. Okay, so this first stage of addiction is called experimental use. Okay, so this is the user's first time experience, typically occurs in a social setting like a party where the drug is available, whether it's alcohol, tobacco, marijuana, or any other substance. And the user at this stage might be curious about the effects of the drug and just try it on an impulse, maybe just this one time, okay? The user doesn't expect to become addicted to the drug. Okay, this stage 2 is called pattern use. Okay, at this stage, the user doesn't purchase drugs and doesn't plan to use them regularly, but will use drugs if they are available. So the user begins a pattern of casual use, typically in social settings. While the user won't experience withdrawal symptoms yet, the user develops a tolerance to the substance. So what does it mean to have a tolerance to a substance? A tolerance is when the body becomes used to the substance and may need more to get the same effect. So the user will begin to need more and more of the drug to produce that same effect. So stage 3 of addiction is called problem use. At this stage, the user buys drugs and plans when and where to use them. Drug use has been going on for some time now, and the drug begins to run the user's life. Think of examples right now of how drugs could begin to run someone's life. Maybe at this stage, people are giving up activities that they like to do in order to be where the drug is. They could start only hanging out with other drug users and drop old friends who don't use drugs. Their grades and extracurricular activities become less important than drug use. Okay, the user in this stage will experience withdrawal symptoms if they try to quit at this point. So withdrawal is the period of time when the addicted user begins to experience uncomfortable symptoms from not taking the drugs. Okay, so experiencing these symptoms makes quitting become very difficult. So stage 4, the last stage of addiction, is called addiction. Okay, so at this stage, the drive to find and use the drug is all that matters, despite the consequences. The cravings are so strong, the user feels compelled to keep using the drug just to feel normal. The body sends a signal to the brain equivalent to the signal sent when a person is hungry. We've all felt hunger pains or hunger before at some point. So the drug becomes as important as food for survival. Okay, users in this stage sometimes turn to risky behaviors like stealing to get money to feed the addiction. Keep in mind that while addiction follows a course of these progressive stages, these stages progress at different rates for different people. So some users might stay at one stage for a long time, while others might quickly go from stage 1 to stage 4. So now we're going to go through the stages of addiction with a drug user named Henry. Okay, the stages and the scenarios that I'm going to read, the scenario I'm going to read is from Henry's friends describing Henry's addiction. Okay, so the first stage, stage one, we describe how Henry started with his experimental use. Okay, so when I met Henry, he was fun and really smart. He was active in all sorts of clubs and had lots of friends. I remember the first time he used a drug. We were at a party and some other kids offered us something. Henry was kind of curious and they were all pressuring us. I made up some excuse to say no, but Henry said, "Why not? It can't hurt to just try once." He didn't take much of the drug, but he said it made him feel weird. Henry didn't think he would do it again. That was his first time. It just happened. He didn't plan it or anything. Okay, so from his friend's account, Henry was in stage one, right? Experimental use. Okay, he took the drug because he was curious. He also felt pressured because he thought everybody else was doing it. He didn't think it was very risky to just try it once. Okay, so experimental use typically happens with a group rather than alone and is a spur of the moment decision. Other motivations for experimental use include peer pressure, maybe wanting to look cool or to fit in. Okay, so now stage two, Henry I was Henry's friend in middle school. He wasn't using drugs very often back then. He still hung out with all his old friends and he was close to his family. Every now and then someone would offer him a drug and he would usually take it. He said that he was getting used to it and it didn't feel so out of it. He didn't feel so out of it like he did the first few times he used the stuff. Henry seemed okay. He wasn't thinking about it all the time and never bought it. He could take it or leave it. All right, so based on this description, Henry was in stage two, which was pattern use. Okay, so he said at this point he only used drugs if other people had them and if they offered him some. Henry didn't know that his body is beginning to develop a tolerance to the effects of the drug. So like other users in the stage, Henry didn't expect to become addicted. Okay, so his next friend says, I was a friend of Henry's for years and we played on the same baseball team. I started to notice a change in Henry's behavior. He missed several practices and stopped hanging out with his regular friends to hang out with the people that used drugs. He began to plan when and where he would use the stuff again. His parents didn't know because Henry would lie about who he was with and where he was going. He missed important baseball games and his grades dropped. Okay, so based on his friend's account, Henry was in stage three, which is problem use. Okay, so when during this stage, his friends begin to notice a change in his behavior, his friends start noticing this part of Henry's addiction developing before his parents noticed, because his old friends didn't use drugs, right? And he starts hanging out with new people who do use drugs. Okay, and he was also lying to his parents. Okay, the user in this stage will seek out peers who have and use drugs and accept drug use. Friends are the first to notice the change in the user's behavior. Okay, and then the last friend says, I was one of Henry's closest friends. One morning I caught Henry using in his room before school. He said he just needed to take the edge off. He seemed irritable and uncomfortable without the drug. I was worried about him, so I told him I thought he had a drug problem. He said he needed it to cope with stress because his parents were on his back all the time. And he said that he didn't need me on his case too. He was yelling and told me to stay out of his life. Okay, so this stage in Henry's life is stage 4, addiction. Okay, this is the stage when the user continues using in order to avoid the feelings of withdrawal. By the time a person reaches this stage, It's obvious to nearly everyone that he or she has a drug problem. Okay, so did you notice that Henry blamed other people for his drug use? People with a drug addiction often have difficulty admitting that the drug is the problem. Okay, so no one plans to become hooked on a drug thinking addiction won't happen to them. That's what they think, that addiction won't happen to them. The reality is that addiction can happen to anyone who tries a drug. Addiction is difficult to overcome, so it's just easier to never start in the first place. Did you know that most teens will never start to use or experiment with drugs? Most teens resist drug use and other risky behaviors because they don't want them to interfere with their lives. They choose healthy alternatives to cope with life's pressures. So some common pressures that teens might face are listed here. The pressure to feel older, pressure to fit in and belong, a pressure to just relax, to take risks, to satisfy curiosity, or to self-medicate. Okay, so we're going to look at these common pressures, and I'm going to give you some examples of healthy alternatives and healthy ways to cope with these pressures. So someone that would like to feel older, some healthy things they could do instead of turning to drug use would be to start to earn and save money. Okay, take on more household responsibilities. Okay, prepare a resume, start making future plans, volunteer for something different. Okay, so those are some of the ways that we could, some healthy alternatives to that pressure of wanting to feel older. Pressure to fit in and belong. So instead of turning to drugs or substances that are harmful, you could join a club, play on a sporting team, help organize school events, start a new hobby, meet new people, and volunteer. Okay, so those are ways to belong to something, whether it's a club or a team or a way to, and it's a way that you can learn a healthy way to fit in and have that feeling of belonging. How about relax, to relax? Okay, so we've talked about relaxing, calming our body down when we talk about our emotions building. So some healthy things we can do are listen to music, play sports, play video games, write in a journal, have lunch with a friend, or just hang out with your friends and laugh, and read. Okay. How about the pressure to take risks? Okay, some healthy risks could be learn how to rock climb, okay, because you can do that in a safe way. Learn how to skateboard. Also, you can do that in a safe way. Perform for an audience. Get a new hairstyle. Ride a thrilling roller coaster. Okay, so what about to satisfy curiosity? All right, watch a documentary on drugs. Do research on drugs. Interview a doctor. Okay, get all your information. Okay, and I'm sure if you do that, you will see the harmful effects, and you will never want you will never be curious again. Okay, and how about to self-medicate? Okay, so go to a doctor, get enough rest, eat healthy, get enough exercise, go for a walk. Okay, so those are some healthy alternatives and to deal with our common pressure, or the common pressures of being a teenager. So remember that most teenagers do not use drugs to cope with life's pressures. Okay, the more you're able to overcome challenges, the more resilient you become. You will learn that you can bounce back from difficult situations and be ready to take on new ones. So our goal in SCAZA is to help you stay on track to reaching your goals. All right, so since this lesson is on addiction, I'm bringing in our executive director, Justin, to talk to you about if maybe you know someone who's going through some of these stages of addiction and what you could do to help. So here's Justin.
Hey everyone. I know this is probably interesting just hearing a new voice without seeing a new face, but I am the executive director at SCAZA, and what I wanted to do is just take a minute and explain to you that addiction is something that could happen to anybody. It could happen to a young person, an old person, it could happen to parents, non-parents. Addiction is something that doesn't have a specific type of person that it affects. So one of the things that I wanted to express to you as students here in Schoharie County is what can you do if you're concerned about someone you care about? Maybe it's a friend, maybe it's a parent, maybe it's older sibling, maybe it's somebody you know from school. What can you do to help somebody who you think is exemplifying one of these 4 stages of addiction? It could be anything from alcohol and substance abuse, drugs, or it could be something that you might not consider to be addictive, like gambling or online gaming, or even on our phones. These are all things that science has proved that people can become addicted to. So what I wanted to share with you is if you know somebody who you're concerned about, you should say something to them. Say, hey, I see this is going on. I see this is something that maybe you might need some help with. Is there anything I can do? However, there might be some situations where that's not possible. Maybe it is a family member. Maybe it is an adult. Maybe it's someone you don't know really well and you still want to help them, but you're not quite sure what to say. If you don't know what to say, that's okay. We have some steps that we want to share with you that you can take to make sure that your friend or whoever the person is can get the help they need. The first step is I encourage you to go home and talk to the grown-up that you live with. Ask them what they think. You know, say I'm concerned about this person, I've been seeing some behaviors that I'm not really sure what to do with, and I'm concerned that they might be hurting themselves. Because that's what addiction does, is it ends up hurting that individual, and you don't want to hurt someone you care about, and you don't want to see them hurting. So if your parents are able to help you, or the grown-up you live with are able to help you, that's great. But maybe that's not the case for you. Maybe there's someone at school you could talk to, a grown-up at school, a counselor or a teacher, a trusted adult. They might be able to help you. Or if all else fails, you could absolutely email us at this email that's on your screen right now, scazaprevention@gmail.com. And we could try to connect you with the person who could help you or your friend or whoever it is that you care about who needs help. Because ultimately our mission here at SCAZA is to help everybody who's needs it, whether it's on the prevention side of things, which is what we're doing right now, or whether it's on the recovery side of things, which is helping people who are no longer addicted but are trying to stay addicted, or the person who is actively using. We want to help them as well. Because like we said earlier, addiction is something that can happen to anyone, and as a peer, you will probably see it in your friends before your friends' parents will. So keep your eyes out for that. Let your friends know that you care. Let your friends know that you're there. And if we can do anything to help you, reach out to us. This is the email again, scazaprevention@gmail.com.